Welcome everyone to another episode of Let's Talk Special Economic Zones. I'm your host Ainsley Brown. I am the Senior Director at Jamaica Special Economic Zone Authority with responsibility for regulations, policy monitoring, and enforcement. In today's episode, let's talk about linkages. And that is linkages with the from the zones to the domestic economy. Now, this is something that zones are often put in place to create, but I would put forward that these things are not something that just happens by accident. I think they, I think, and I believe strongly actually, that these things have to be programmed in. If you use a basic tenet of economics or even human nature of people respond to incentives, then you'll understand what I mean in that you have to incentivize these things happening. Now, as we've discussed in previous episodes, incentives can vary from financial to fiscal to non-financial or non-fiscal. And that is to say, with financial, of course, that's straight cash money. Fiscal is it's some sort of rebate or some sort of discount, so you could get a lower corporate income tax rate or something of the sort. Now, in terms of programming the linkages, I think this is where uh, government planning, government programming within an SEZ regime is of critical importance because it speaks to the wider benefits of a special economic zone. And what that does is that and you can see it in for example in China or in specifically Shenzhen, whereby things were put in place so that purchases would be made from the domestic economy. So therefore, there would have been the spillover effects in Jamaica, for example. We have one specific incentive, just to show you as an example, where our GCT or VAT or value added tax, any purchases from the domestic territory, the SEZ entity is entitled to get that zero rated. So you move from, it's currently 15%, you move from 15% to zero. And that can have enormous effects on a company's cash flow. And especially in this time of COVID, that is of utmost importance. In Costa Rica, for example, what they have done is they have incentivized, among other things, they do more than one thing, but one of the main things that they do in terms of incentivizing is that for linkages is that any company that sells to SEZ company, provided they reach a particular threshold. I can't remember what the threshold is at this moment. Provided they reach a particular threshold in their sales to SEZs, they become entitled to the SEZ benefits themselves. So, there's great incentive to sell to SEZs. In addition, there's also in many ways incentives for the SEZs because things can become cheaper because knowing that it is at a lower rate. Without the value added tax, for example, in Jamaica, things can become more or less expensive or cheaper than presumably for imports. So Jamaica has had a long journey with its SEZ free trade zone regime, SEZ regime starting in the late 70s to now, and we in the days of our free zone we didn't have that incentive of incentivizing purchases from the domestic economy because that was not the model. The model was more about mass employment and which worked for the time, especially in the 80s. People remember the days of the garment sector in Jamaica. So we didn't have that. So you didn't have those domestic purchases happening. But now with that incentive, there's greater purchases happening and we're working towards getting even greater incentives. Now, that is an example of a fiscal um, incentive. Now, financial, Jamaica has not had any financial and doesn't have, and I don't think it would intend to move to financial incentives. But in terms of non-financial incentives, there are many. There are some that are more company specific or company focused. So particularly multinationals may have programs that they run around minority businesses, and those businesses they've set out that they will purchase a certain percentage from minority businesses and such and so forth. So the subsidiary that is present have an incentive, have a directive from their parent company to go out and make such purchases. So that's one side. The other side is that, and we're in the early days in Jamaica, we're trying to set up almost a rewards program scheme whereby you collect SEZ points, if you will, and that entitles you to certain discounts, particularly off government services, but also the move over time. And as I said, we're in very, very early days, preliminary stages at this point, is to move so that trading could occur between the non-SEZ and SEZ companies, where these points are used, as a discount scheme, and further encouraging through non-fiscal measures um, and non-financial measures, trading between the zones and the domestic economy. As well, in terms of what governments can do, and this becomes very, very important, is that governments would have to or need to, and as we're doing as well here at the Jamaica Special Economic Zone Authority, and with the rest of the government working in concert, is you have to raise the standards. Many of the companies within the SEZs will be multinational companies or foreign companies, and they are used to operating or receiving goods and services at a particular standard. And unless that can be met, the linkages will be for naught. It will not work. So governments will need to invest in raising the standards, and we're doing that. Whether it's quality standards, food safety standards, you name it, those standards have to be raised in order to um, allow for the linkages to happen, and that in effect has a spillover effect, because by raising the standards of the domestic company, they not only can sell to the SEZ, they also can sell internationally. So it opens up other avenues, other windows or gates for them that would otherwise have remained closed. So it increases market access. Oftentimes, you have trade agreements and the market access is there, but companies can't reach it because they can't reach the standard. The SEZs, while domestically located, function almost in an international space. So you have to reach that standard in order to reach that level. And if not, there will be a bit of a challenge and the linkages won't work. So governments need to intervene that way. So incentives work, but also raising standards work. Thank you. That's been another episode. If you like what I said today, please like, share, subscribe, and please leave a comment or leave a question. If you have a suggestion for a future episode, please leave it in the comment box. Bye for now.